Best.Podcast.Ever is sponsored by the Gertsburg Law Firm, a full-service business law firm in Cleveland and Chagrin Falls that's changing the way businesses retain their attorneys. Go to gertsburglaw.com to learn more. While you're there, check out CoverMySix, a complete legal audit of the 6 areas that most often create or prevent business lawsuits and government investigations. Go to CoverMySix.com to learn how we keep you safe. Enjoy the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're about to listen to the best podcast ever recorded.
How does a 14-year-old borrow $57,000, Terry?
Very carefully.
Hey folks, Alex Gertsburg here. I will be the only voice you hear for the next couple minutes. Much to many of our listeners' chagrin, I'm sure those especially who know and love my co-host Molly Gebler, who sadly will not be joining us. So the interview you're about to hear is with Terry Capuano. Terry's an interesting cat. I've known him for a number of years. Let's see, I started the Gertsburg Law Firm exactly 6 years ago, and I think I've known him for most of that time. And throughout that time, in addition to just growing the law firm, I've been growing this service of the law firms called CoverMySix, which is a legal audit of the 6 areas most likely to get a business sued, which, by the way, you should check out at CoverMySix.com. But that really is the law firm was a startup, but that is a true startup in the sense that it is a service that I believe is not currently out there. I don't think there's anything like it out there. So it is probably the most entrepreneurial endeavor that I've ever had. So the reason I mention all that is because Terry's been a really good mentor to me throughout the last 6 years as I've gotten CoverMySix off the ground and used it really as a vehicle to differentiate the firm and to run it more like a business than a law firm, which I think is partly responsible for a lot of our success. Terry is a serial entrepreneur. He has owned lots of companies, has grown a number of companies, has sold off a number of companies. He's currently running a polymer casting company called Castanite, which I think is also called Precision Polymer Casting. He does small business consulting. He runs a charity, a children's charity. He runs a real estate rehab company. He runs a local water utility. He is the textbook serial entrepreneur. And he's also pretty similar to a lot of our clients in the sense that they're startups and they're small businesses. And they are run by folks who have that bug. Folks who decided, I'm not really employable. I'm going to put all of my chips into the risky bucket, not the secure, steady paycheck bucket. And I'm going to become a master of my own freedoms, my freedoms of relationships and of time and of money, knowing that I've got no safety net in many ways, but I do have unlimited upside. And so Terry made that call, and he's made that call really successfully a number of times. We had a really good conversation that covered a lot of ground for the would-be and veteran entrepreneur. We talked about cash flow management and employment relationships, legal issues, value propositions, taking goods to market, and lots of other fun things. So I hope you enjoy it. I'm sorry you won't be hearing Molly's voice, and you will next time. So enjoy. Thanks, folks. Terry Capuano, how are you?
I'm fine. How you doing?
Good. Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
Yes, you did. Better than I do.
Nice Irish name.
Yes, it is.
Hey, do you know what part of Italy your last name hails from?
In fact, I do.
Really? Share.
Naples. And there is a Capuano castle in
Interesting.
downtown Naples today.
Napoli.
I have no clue how it got there and how I'm related, or if I'm related, to anybody that built a castle, but it's now a hotel.
Have you been?
No.
Why?
Uh,
You need to go, man.
yeah, I know.
Go see your castle. That's probably a great grandfather of yours. Maybe you even own a piece of it.
Well, it wouldn't have to be back too far because my grandfather and grandmother came from Italy. So I'm only 2 generations away from people who actually lived there.
Okay. And you are currently a resident of this fine town of Chagrin Falls area and
Yes.
surrounding area.
Yes.
Have you been a resident of this fine town for a while?
I have been here 32 years.
32 years.
I lived in Moreland Hills for 10 years in a little house and then bought a much bigger one on the Chagrin River 22 years ago.
I've been to your house. It is on the river. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I love
that
it.
is. You've got a really cool situation over there. If I lived in your house, I would rarely be inside except in the winter. You got this gorgeous embankment on the river,
Yeah.
right? Just it's really nice. Anywho, Terry, as the listeners would have already heard by now, because I would have pre-recorded your bio. The background that you have is really interesting. It is about as entrepreneurial as I've seen in one person.
Yeah.
You secrete, you bleed business ownership. Right?
Yes, I do. In fact, I have 3 brothers, all of who owned businesses as well.
Yeah.
So it's in my family.
Going back to, I'm not going to say how old you are, but
Thank you.
To like when you were 5. What did I read? That your first foray into business ownership was as a 5-year-old, and by the time you were 14, you were already doing leveraged buyouts. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty close to it, yeah.
All right. Well, so what's the 5-year and what's the 14-year?
Well, at 5, I would cut lilac flowers off our tree, walk down to the road, and try to catch people going home from the factory to see if I could sell them flowers.
Right. And then at 14, I read it and I couldn't believe it. You were running a manufacturing company?
It was a plastics company.
Plastics company.
Yeah, a plastic injection molding.
Yeah. And you bought it using bank money and a seller's note? Is that
Yeah,
right?
I actually put no money down. It was a rather unique situation. The bank took 50% of the purchase price. The seller took back 50%. I was paying the bank 12% interest.
Does it seem it seems crazy to me that you're how much you buy the company for?
I believe it was $110,000 or $120,000.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. You're 14 years old.
Yeah. Well, I that was just one of many businesses. Automotive machine shop.
Does it seem as crazy to you as it seems to me? How does a 14-year-old borrow, I guess, what's half of 114? This is where my math sucks. Is that $57,000?
Very good.
Wow, 50. How does a 14-year-old borrow $57,000, Terry?
Very carefully. Yeah.
Lots of cosigners, I imagine.
Yeah, cosign.
All right.
Yeah.
Jeez, that's insane. Well, you are head of a company called Precision Polymer Casting.
Yes.
And that is, as the name would imply, a polymer casting company, right?
Yeah.
You also do small business consulting. You run a charity. You've flipped houses. You've run a local water utility. You, my friend, are you have a hard time sitting still, is what I'm guessing. Even though you're sitting perfectly still right now,
Barely.
You have a lot of interests.
Yeah.
It's a pretty crazy variety right there.
I sold a company and tried retiring, and lasted about a year. I couldn't stand it. So, most people go through their job and they say, man, I can't wait till I retire. I expect to keep working until I can't anymore, because I can't sit home. I can't do nothing. I have to do something.
Yeah.
And the more different things I can do, the more I like it.
You've been really helpful to me. You've been kind of a mentor to me as I've grown products and services of this law firm and tried to be non-traditional and disruptive. And you've given me a lot of tips. And it is from that place that I really want to launch into this episode, because there are, and I'm calling them Terry-isms at this point, that I have accumulated and that you've shared with us just in preparing for this podcast, and I want to get into them. And so I'm going to extract from you some of your Terry-isms and then have you talk about them. And my guess is that certainly the business owners and the would-be business owners within the sound of my voice that are listening to this are probably going to get as much value from listening to this as I have from knowing you.
I hope so.
Yeah. So, boy, I don't even know where to start, Terry. There's so much good stuff here. Let me ask you this. When was the last time you worked for somebody else as an employee?
Wow. A long time ago. A long time. And it was a guy I really liked. I mean, he was my mentor. He was just a high quality character and a good person to learn how to treat other people and how to treat business. And but that was a long time ago. I'd have to think way back.
Many moons ago.
Yeah. I'm a terrible employee. I've been fired a couple times just because I've always done what I thought was right for the company, often against my best interests. And sometimes my manager wouldn't see it my way. And so I would part company.
I often tell people that the really good entrepreneurs are the ones that realized at some point that they're totally unemployable.
Yeah, yeah.
And that they're more of a pain in the butt to somebody else than is worthwhile for them.
Yeah.
There's no way I really don't think I could ever work for anybody else at this point unless I got complete discretion to do whatever I wanted.
Yes.
There's value to having some parameters that you're working within, but I think that those of us who have run their own businesses for any amount of time don't do well, and the ones that have done that for a while and have succeeded don't do well following instructions.
We're rule makers. We're rule makers for other people, but we're not good at following. And it's because we see a different path than other people typically. We kind of see the end game and do everything we can to achieve that. And the average person kind of has a goal in mind, kind of follows the rules. Frankly, inventors are really poor managers because they think in so many different directions and think abstractly. And to be a good manager in a big business, you need to be very consistent. You need to follow the rules. You can't have 20 people doing 20 different routes.
Yeah.
And so for me, I have to do my own thing.
Terry, what's a hard lesson that you learned the hard way?
Wow, a lot of them. Well, cash flow. In any business, businesses, kind of their function is to not do nothing more than process cash. I get cash from customers. I give cash out to employees and to contractors and to vendors. And if I look at it that basically, my purpose in business is to make sure that what I get from customers is more than what I give out. But when you're starting a company, most of us are overly optimistic as to cash flow. And I've had situations where somehow I thought I was going to be able to get that cash in. And if you don't sit down and do an actual cash flow and a plan, you'll find that you got partway down the road and things are going great. And I got a lot of customers. Unfortunately, the more customers I have, the more cash I need.
Mm-hmm.
And banks have always been difficult to work with as far as an entrepreneur. They don't understand us. They don't trust us. And you know, they have to protect their assets as well.
So I feel like cash flow is like a monkey on my back, you know, getting it right. And when you get it right, you don't think about it. You really think about it when you're struggling with it a lot.
Yes.
And then it haunts you.
Yes.
And that's all you can think about. There is I think a limited number of ways to improve your cash flow. One is you raise prices.
Yeah, if you can.
Right. 2 is you cut your expenses.
If you can.
3 is work more efficiently with volume. Right.
Right.
What else? What am I missing?
Well, increase sales. Increase sales gets more cash in, and it could get more cash out.
Yeah.
I had a funny situation. I bought a company in Arizona, a soft drink bottling company, and cash was tight. So often I would float checks.
Mm-hmm.
I would write a check from my Ohio bank account to pay something in Arizona, knowing that I now had back then, I had another week or two before
Right.
that cash was going to be needed, and I could keep cycling that way. It gave me enough extra cash to keep the company going and keep us cash positive. So that was
You were playing the float.
I was playing the float. Legal, you know, it was completely legal, and it worked. Today, that doesn't work because the banks will.
Right.
I mean, even Ohio and I think Minnesota work together. If I cash a check from Minnesota, it gets cashed up there right away.
You know who plays the float now is the banks.
Yeah,
right?
they
hold on to your money every last minute that they can.
Well, think about how many dollars they handle and
Right.
what percentage they're paying for money and what happens when they don't have to pay that.
Yeah. I have found cash flow to be difficult to manage when I have been emotional.
Absolutely.
Particularly with employees. So, like a lot of, I'm sure like a lot of small business owners, and I'm a small business owner. I've got 16 employees here.
Yeah.
It's important to me that the people who work for me are happy. We're a tight-knit family.
Mm-hmm.
I always tell people, you know, we spend more time with each other than we do with our siblings and with our kids, with our
Yes,
spouses.
you do. Yeah.
And so it's important to me anyway for this to be a positive working environment. And over the course of building this business, I've become very close with the people, and we have a really good culture and have become very close with each other. It has been hard for me to fire people. It has been hard for me to cut pay when someone is underperforming.
Mm-hmm.
It has been difficult for me to, when I see somebody that I know is trying hard, but isn't getting what I need accomplished in terms of numbers, cracking that code, figuring out how to properly motivate them and incentivize them has been difficult for me when I have been overly concerned about their feelings and I know you have to be, right? But that impacts cash flow too. And sometimes, and this is a really long-winded question, but this is where I want to get your input. It has been hard for me to act unemotionally with employees when their sub-performance or non-performance has really affected my cash flow. What's your advice? How have you dealt with it in the past?
Well, for one thing, everybody seems to think that when you're managing people, you have to be friends with them, and you have to the cash flow part of this is, well, Joe needs another $50 and I'm going to give it to him, or, he had this situation, I'll borrow some money and I know I'm not going to see it again. And the fact is, the happiest employees are not the ones that you get carried away with giving stuff to. It's the ones that feel like you're being fair to them and to everybody. The minute you give Joe an extra day off because his dog died, Sam wants it because his cat died, and Fred wants it because of something else. And all of a sudden you have unhappy people. I worked for a small company years ago that started a bonus program. They were giving out bonuses, but there were a lot of really strict rules. And they got more people unhappy getting the money than they did happy. And so happy employees aren't ones you give a bunch to. Happy employees are ones that feel like you're giving them credit for what they do. You're training them where you can, but they don't get any more dollars, or they don't get any happier, with extra pay or other benefits that other people don't get. It's hard when you're a manager to be unemotional.
Right.
But you have to be. Everybody in this organization depends on this organization making money and existing. If you allow one or two people to get away with not doing it, then I got 14 unhappy people, and those two people could drag me down to the point where we don't have a business anymore, and not only are they unemployed, but everybody's unemployed. So strict cash flow based on unemotional decisions has to be what you do. And treating them, the first thing I do when I start a company and I have one employee, I write a handbook. It means that number 1 and number 2 and number 5 and number 50 are all going to get treated the same way. You follow the handbook.
Right.
They come to you and say, I need to borrow money. So what's the handbook say? Well, it says you don't get loans. Period. Sorry. You're, and I just went through this with an employee that we let come in late, and he always had some excuse. He was in jail, or his car didn't work, or he had to bail out his wife, or whatever it was. And we needed the body because it's so hard to hire people. And I finally had told my manager, I'm sorry you need him, but you got to get rid of him. He's a poison apple, and he's going to poison everybody else. So, again.
Did he let him go?
Yep, we sure did. Yeah. I would have done it a long time ago. I have someone running the manufacturing company for me, and I let him, I give him a lot of leeway, but frankly, allowing people to do things that are contrary to the best interest of everybody, underperforming, not showing up on time, that's a killer. Yeah.
Tell me about a time when you were glad that you didn't do things by the book.
That's all the time. The book is, this is what other people did, and if you follow this, hopefully you'll follow the same path. And I have found that in order to be a successful entrepreneur, you can't, I go to college and I learn standard stuff that everybody learns. Well, if I apply those principles and Joe applies those principles, what advantage do I have? So you always have to step outside the box. Leverage buyout when I was young. Nobody had heard of something like that. And 100% leverage buyout of a manufacturing company. That's way outside the box. And simply, in one case, I was consulting with a company and converted them to a 4-day week, 10 hours a day. And the reason I did that is they had equipment that took about a half an hour in the morning to warm up to be able to operate properly. So they lost, all that time every single day, 5 days a week. I got it down to 4 days a week. People tend to get a second breath after 8 hours. So they work a 10-hour day. They got their 40 hours in. We had 2 less breaks a week for 10 people. We had 10 people that didn't have to sit around in the morning 1 day a week waiting for the equipment to warm up. And we didn't have that lunch break. So our efficiency went way up on that. Plus the fact I was up in Wisconsin, and when hunting season came, you were going to lose people on Fridays anyway.
Right.
I mean, they weren't going to be there. So it worked out really well.
One of your truisms, one of your Terryisms is always write an agreement regardless of how small you start. What comes to mind when you hear me say that, when you hear me repeat your words?
I have been burned for not... Joe, Sam, and Fred get together. Okay, we all agree that I'm going to do this, and Joe's going to do that, and Sam's going to do this other thing. And we all start out optimistic, just as you do in marriage. And I see it exactly the same. You're a marriage of your group. You know, the organization is marrying each other. And as you said, sometimes you spend more time together with your partners than you do with your spouse.
Right.
So you need to know where you're going. You need to know who's going to be responsible for what. And in all relationships of more than one person, somebody's going to think the other person's doing more work or less work than they are. So there's always going to be some cognitive dissonance. You know, I think that I'm working so much harder than they are. So if you put it in writing and you all understand what it is, even if it's a letter of understanding, saying this is what we agree to, you have a lot less likely situation in the future where, well, I thought you were going to take care of the contractors and I was going to take care of the books. And I just went through this with a rehab company we set up, making sure everybody understood what their responsibility was. And at the end of it, we still had somebody that didn't follow through. And you say, well, you agreed at the beginning of this. This is what you're going to do. So I think putting it in writing lets everybody understand what you're trying to accomplish and who's responsible for what.
So I cannot overemphasize enough how important that is, speaking as a lawyer.
Yes.
I would be perfectly happy if clients didn't come to us to resolve disputes that arose from failing to write things down, because that meant that we are helping them grow in other ways. Instead, what we're helping our clients do is resolve these disputes with customers, with employees, with partners, with vendors,
right,
that are so easily avoided. I really think that if there is one Terryism that people walk away from this podcast internalizing, it's that one, because you will save money on lawyers. You will save a lot of distraction and a lot of heartache. And the thing of it is, it's one of your, so you're right. It does come with, it comes from optimism, over optimism.
Always optimistic, right? At the beginning.
You just think everything's going to work out fine.
Yes.
When I draft a contract for a client, I pretend like I'm the little kid in the sandbox who won't let other people play with their toys. I get greedy with the language in my contract. And the reason is that I expect that the next time somebody actually reads it is when they're no longer friends.
Right.
When they're consulting with lawyers.
Right.
And so getting your legal terms down is important, but getting the facts down, getting the factual understanding down is step one. And aside from the over optimism that causes people to not write things down is just, I want to say laziness, but it's not lazy, because what it is people have their own activities and tasks that they're drawn towards, that they're excited about, that they believe give them the most growth.
Right.
And that they're uniquely capable of doing.
Yes.
And then there are things that less meticulous and less detail-oriented people, not lazy or not lazy, just that is not something that people think that they're good at or that they want to spend their time doing, is crossing their T's and dotting their I's. If you are one of those people, get a good assistant.
Yes.
And bring that person into your office after you've just reached some kind of understanding with someone and say, send an email.
Yeah.
Prepare an email, prepare a letter for me to sign, but button that up. I usually say that a business is really just a series of relationships with people waiting to sue you. It's very cynical, Terry, right?
Yeah, but boy, is it true.
It is so if you go into your business with that mindset,
right,
which you should, then either get good at being that detail-oriented and writing down those details and those understandings, or get somebody in your office that will do that for you.
I think most entrepreneurs are like me. We're terrible at details. I only... it's through experience that I said I had to do this. Now, when I started the manufacturing company, I not only wrote specific contract between the three, there's a silent partner and a working partner, myself. I also wrote, how do we get out of this? What happens if I decide that I need to get out, or I decide that my partner isn't performing?
Yeah.
And so essentially I have a prenup, and it says the value, his shares in the company, which I gave him, are going to be worth this much based on these set of conditions, so that at any period of time, we know how we're going to part company.
Right.
And if you don't do that, I think, again, entrepreneurs, I'm optimistic, business is going to work out great, everybody's going to be happy, everybody has my vision. Well, they don't.
Right.
They see things differently. And so it's extremely important. So we know we're going down the same path. I mean, that's the other reason you write this is I need to know we're going down the same path.
And by the way, memories are so fallible and so malleable. And I can't remember conversations that I had with people today or yesterday.
But you hear what you want to hear.
Right.
I heard you tell me if we're partners, I'm going to get, $100,000 a year. That's what I heard you say. And maybe you hinted that that's what you'd like to see me do, but that 100,000 depended on the company making 10 million or something,
Yeah. Or is it based on the gross or the net?
Right.
Drilling down into the details. And that's really where you can get a lot of value talking to somebody like Terry Capuano or Alex Gertsburg, is because you think you know what the 360 degrees of issues are around the agreement that you're reaching or the understanding that you have. But there are all of these offshoots.
Right.
And talking to somebody, I usually say the trigger that tells you whether to talk to a professional is often how much money are you willing to lose.
Right.
Is it important? Don't be penny wise and pound foolish by not talking to a tax advisor or an accountant or a lawyer or an insurance professional if the thing that you're talking with somebody about is as valuable or significantly more valuable than what you'd be paying that person.
There's two professionals that you really need to start your company with, and that is a good attorney and a good accountant. Those are key to setting up your organization properly. And yes, it's expensive. I mean, attorneys are going to cost you some money, but if you really want to be in business, and if you really want this business to grow, and if you want to keep your business, then you need to do that. And the accountant is the same way. I mean, I don't know. I do a lot of consulting for contractors, the guy that comes to your house and fixes your furnace. And most of those guys started out as a technician, thought the boss was making way too much money and he could do it himself. And so he started out on his own and he made a bunch of money. Now he starts hiring people. And now he's got accounts payable and accounts receivable, and he's buying stuff from his vendors, and all of a sudden he's got this accounting nightmare because he doesn't know how to handle accounting. And I've gone to several of these guys who thought because they had money in their checkbook, they were making money. What they forgot was they owed my client who was supplying them, $100,000 for equipment. And they, hardly any of these guys pay attention to the books. They really don't know whether they're making money or not. They don't know what they're over. I was with one guy, and I said, "What's your overhead? Or how much you charge an hour?" I said, "Well, I charge $55 an hour." "Okay, what's your overhead?" And you get this blank stare. And I said, "Okay, take your books for last year, deduct anything to do with people, their salaries, their fringe benefits. What's that number?" And he gave me the number. So how many employees do you have, and divide into that, and how many hours can they work practically, and divide that in there. That's your overhead. Well, his overhead was $65 an hour overhead. And then he's paying his guys $20 an hour, and he's charging $55. Couldn't figure out why he was losing money.
I think that a lot of people that go into business know how to do their one thing.
Yes.
Right? So
absolutely.
They know how to make that widget. Sometimes they're really good at selling that widget.
Yep.
But all of the things that go into operating and growing a business, if you want to be that contractor, have no employees and no overhead,
you're
great. Go do your thing.
Money.
Right. Once those expenses start racking up, and once you decide that you aren't happy just being a one-man shop, once you decide that you want to start growing,
right,
you really need to marshal your resources. To me, those resources, I spend a lot of time thinking about how to be efficient about this, because now it's like drinking from a fire hose. There's so much out there.
Yes.
Good books, good mentors, good podcasts. Right. What were the resources you relied on the most besides your gut?
I tell you, it was mostly my gut. I mean, I just often didn't do things the way you should. For example, this polymer technology I developed, I was told by experts that what I was planning on doing, as far as the way I was going to mix this material and the way I was going to apply it, it wasn't going to work. There was no way what I was doing was going to work. And this was by people, luckily there was a formulator in Solon who was a epoxy expert. And luckily I didn't listen to him, because what he told me would not work. He's been in it 20 years. He knows all about it. I don't know anything about epoxy, but I played with it and it worked. So sometimes the development of the new product is because I didn't know any better. And had I known better, I wouldn't have done it. So, but the problem is, in most cases, a highly inventive person has a mind that likes to wander and do something new. They are terrible managers.
Yeah.
They are terrible business people. I mean, Elon Musk is kind of proving that you got to be. People like him need a really strong manager. The best companies I've seen are where the inventor was smart enough to say, "I want to keep playing with my invention. I don't want to be bogged down with sales and administration." And they bring in a strong manager who gets that organization operating on a system. The system works. They know how to go. They know what to do. And he plays in the shop.
Right.
And that, to me, is an ideal place to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when companies get that wrong, they might get there. They might get the results that founder wants, but it is a painful process. The employees are often butting heads with the founder, who's often very emotional.
Yep.
And I just finished reading the Steve Jobs biography by Walter Isaacson. Have you read that at all?
No.
Man, I mean, he and Elon Musk are both total psychopaths.
Yeah.
Or were. Steve Jobs is dead now, but you're right. So on the one hand, they need strong managers who can reel them in or rein them in.
Yes.
They need strong boards.
Yes.
Who can represent and advance the interests of investors.
That's correct.
But you also need the tenacity of the Elon Musk and the Steve Jobs.
Absolutely.
Steve Jobs, one thing that I think both of them did, whenever anyone told, well, actually, Elon Musk did this. Whenever anyone told Elon Musk it can't be done,
yeah, right.
Elon Musk would take the job away from him and do it himself, just to prove that it could be done.
Right.
When Steve Jobs was told something couldn't be done, he would fire the guy and replace him with somebody else who would get it done, or would just browbeat them and abuse them openly in front of everybody. The point is, really crappy temperaments, really poor people skills, but both have these tenacious personalities, and they will get it done. It just might not be the friendliest or most efficient way to do it.
The difference between the successful entrepreneur and the average person is we see a target at the end, and we keep climbing to get there, and we go one path and we get blocked, we go another path, we get there. The average person has a target, he gets stopped, and he gets stopped, period. That's the end of it. Most people have some idea for an invention. Some are good, some are bad, but they got an idea. How many are successful? Very, 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 very few. Why? Because they see the end. Oh, I could make millions of dollars selling this mop, but they called somebody that sells mops, and the guy said, that's a dumb idea. And that was it. That was the end of their path. So it's really going all those, it's seeing the ending and not worrying about how to get there, but getting there.
And being good with the bumps in the road, being okay failing, right?
I that's the one thing I see is I no matter what happens, I find a way around that roadblock. Yeah. And when I deal with other people, I see them stop all the time, and I can't do it. They said I can't do it. Well, go to his boss, go around him, go to a competitor, find some way around that obstacle. There's a way around it. I guarantee. Yeah. Easy thing is to say I couldn't do it.
You said, in response to our crack research team's interview of you, having a new product idea is common. Getting it to market is 90% of the work. What are you thinking of when you hear me say that?
I've met a lot of people who are inventors who have come up with ideas, and they think that they're 90% of the way to getting this to market. And the fact is, the invention is a very small percentage of getting it to market. Getting it to market means you've got to be able to produce it. It means you've got to be able to figure out what the marketplace wants, how to get to the market, who wants it, and that's 90% of the task. I have two interesting stories. I worked for a company that a local professor from Trinity College came to him and said, I have this glue, and the glue works in the presence of oxygen, in the absence of oxygen, in the absence of oxygen. And we think if you put it on your fasteners that it'll stay liquid until they put it into a hole, and then opposite of most adhesives at the time, where you needed air to have the solvent come off, these needed no air to work. So the company packaged it up. Their company name was Holochrome. They packaged it. They called it Hololock. Sent it off to the distributors. Absolutely 100% failed. They couldn't give the stuff away. The inventor decided that he was going to take it on his own, and it ended up being called Loctite.
Interesting.
That same company, successful, the Holochrome, at least when I was there, was one of the most profitable companies, manufacturing companies in the United States, percent profit to sales. And all they did was make socket screws, but extremely profitable. They had somebody else come to them with a way to fix tapped holes. If you strip out a tapped hole, you could put a little piece of wire in there, and you could make it hold the bolt. Again, they packaged it up, they put their name on it, they sent it out to their distributors. Absolutely failed. Couldn't give the stuff away. It ended up becoming Helicoil. Highly successful company. What happened? That step of the invention to the marketing plan to make it work was missing. The company thought, it's a great invention, I'll just send it out in the marketplace, and somehow that marketplace is going to know how to use this and what to use it for. So that's why I'm saying you have a great invention, but if you don't figure out a marketing plan, and that's the other thing I keep meaning, one of the things I also tell everybody that I consult with is you need a business plan. If you don't have a business plan, you're a pilot up in the air with a tank of gas, and you have no clue where you're going or where you're going to land.
Right.
You have to know where you're going. And if nothing else, you also need that plan for your employees. Does Gertsburg want to be a 16-person organization or a 100-person organization? Your employees need to know, where are you going? What's your thought? What do you want to do in a year from now, 10 years from now? What's your vision? If you write a plan, then you can tell your organization what your vision is, and they know where they're supposed to be going. Yeah, I only want to be 10 people. I don't want to be any more than 10 people because then it gets too complicated. Or I want to be 100 people.
Yeah. There's a really good exercise that we just did here at my company. It's called the 10X Mind Expander. And I didn't create this. I stole it from Dan Sullivan. The idea is once you've been in business for some period of time, you've probably 10X'd at some point.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you started, you had maybe a few customers. And so after a few years, you've got lots of customers and you've got 10 times more revenue than you did. So pinpointing the beginning and end of that 10X timeline allows you to say, okay, what has changed in our processes, in our customers, in our employee makeup, in anything about our business between the beginning of that timeline and the end of that timeline. Now, and hopefully the end of that timeline is now.
Yes.
Right? So we 10X'd this business over probably the last 3 years. Okay. So then step 2 is, okay, now imagine 10 times where we are now, 10 times the revenue, 10 times the income. Okay. What does that timeline look like? And pretend like you're already there and you're looking backwards.
Okay.
And so we created this bullet point list of descriptors that, where we're visualizing the last I think it was 3 to 5 years, because that's how we have established our next timeline to 10X, right?
Okay.
And we're visualizing it. I mean, really visualizing details and imagining what should have happened in the last 3 to 5 years
to get there,
to go from October 8th, 2018 to 10 times where we are today.
Yes.
And it involves new software, new capabilities, partnerships with other companies, new processes. And that now is so we have we call it the Gertsburg Law Firm Book of Spells. It's really a policy manual. But page 1 in it is that 10X exercise, so that we are constantly making a beeline for 10 times today.
Yes. Yeah.
And constantly being aware of the things that we're going to need to acquire and do in order to get there. All of which is a very long-winded way of saying, I agree with you. You need to communicate your business plan and your goals and your vision with your employees on a regular basis and have it in front of them. Put it in front of them so that they can see it as a roadmap, as a blueprint to where you're going.
Otherwise, they're just traveling down the road, enjoying life and looking at the scenery, and they don't understand that the path you're trying to take may not be the path that they're on.
And I think, too, it helps the stickiness of your plan and your group. And I know for me, I want to know that I'm part of a rocket ship. I want to know that I'm part of something bigger than me, and I want to know what my role in it is.
Right.
And getting everyone on the same page with your business plan and with your growth objectives really creates that stickiness. It really helps the cohesiveness of your team and of your plan.
Well, I assume if you're going to be 10 times bigger, that you're going to have attorneys that are supervisors of other attorneys. And so if I'm working for you, then I see an opportunity that I might not see otherwise. You know, if we're 16 people, I like coming to work. I don't want to do any more work than I have to do. That's great. Or I'm ambitious and boy, I've done this for a couple of years now. Now I need something else to challenge me. And that challenge may be, we're going to bring in some junior guys. You're going to bring in some guys out of school or junior guys, and you're going to be the trainer. And you understand that because we said 2 years ago that to get to this point, we need people that are trainers. And so as your employee, I see opportunities that give me something to look forward to.
Right. There's another piece of that too. I spend time at every staff meeting. The very first thing we do at every staff meeting is we go around the table and we say some recent wins, right? What are some recent wins that people have had? And I write them all down. And this does a couple of things. That road through the world of 10X is slow. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint, right? Mm-hmm. And it's easy to believe that you're standing still. Right. So today we had a staff meeting and I rolled out the last 2 years worth of wins that we all over the last 2 years at every staff meeting have been contributing to.
Yes.
It was 5 pages, single-spaced bullet points.
Wow.
And being able to look over your shoulder at your history of wins is really important. As you are getting people on the same page of your business plan and getting everybody to see your vision.
Right.
It's so important to celebrate those wins and record those wins so that people appreciate that A, they're on a winning team,
yes,
and B, that they've accomplished a lot. They've accomplished a lot. And it was kind of a magical moment today when people started reviewing that list and appreciating how far we've come.
Yes.
You know? But I think that's a really important tool that probably a lot of businesses, I know some businesses do that. A lot of businesses don't. I think most should.
Do not do something like that. Yeah.
Right.
No, it's sales organizations tend to be more motivational sort of programs like that. Where, I was with a big company and we used to post everybody's sales. We were having trouble motivating, so we post everybody's sales. And the guy that was at the bottom of the list, sales to goal. Because you may have had General Motors as your customer and somebody else may have had Chrysler. And so we did that to encourage the guy at the bottom to try to do better. Sort of like billable hours. If you started posting everybody's billable hours, the guy at the bottom may start getting nervous that, I'm only doing 50 a week and everybody else is 80 or whatever the numbers are. So the motivation there is, these guys are hitting their goals, the company's hitting its goal, and these guys aren't, so we need people that can always hit their goals.
Terry, you are talking to the Terry Capuano of 20 years ago, all right?
Yeah.
Not me, but let's pretend it's me, all right? I was going to say pretend he's sitting in this chair over here, okay? So today's Terry knows where that guy's going, but that guy doesn't know where he's going. What do you say to that guy to prepare him or her for what's to come?
Buy more gold. I bought a bunch of gold at like $280 an ounce back then, knowing that the price was less than what it cost to get it out of the ground, knowing that it had to come up. Didn't expect it to get to $1,200 as quickly as it did. But that would be my advice.
What advice would you give would you give young Terry about running their business? That you haven't already said today?
I've been running businesses so long, it's hard to think back to what. I swear I was smarter 20 years ago than I am now. At least I felt like I was smarter back then. So there isn't much I can think about. The things I said, write your plans down, know where you're going.
Yeah. What do you see? So you're a business consultant. I read that you helped a business last year renegotiate a contract that ended up saving them like $600,000 or something like that.
I got involved with a a privately held company that third generation was, the guy was brought in to run. His father said, "I'm retiring." The son was off in New England selling software and had not really been involved in the business. He came in. Company had a lot of problems, and they had, the biggest one was this guy's uncle was running half the company, and the uncle and the boy, the man, didn't get along very well and had completely different points of view. Not necessarily either one was 100% right, but they were different. And so the uncle, one of my tasks was to get a third owner of the company out early and to sell off a building where he was just screwing the company royally on rent on a really crappy warehouse. We found another warehouse, one story, went from something like 14 warehouse employees to 2. A huge amount of damage to almost none, and a lot of pilferage to virtually none. That lease for the new building came up, and the company was struggling. So I went to the people that they were leasing it from, renegotiated a lease. The current lease I renegotiated down and got them a future lease at a significant savings. Total savings was $646,000. And I billed them $125 for my services. So they got a pretty good deal. I also sold off 42 of their company cars for 115 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would say that you should have billed them more.
Yeah. Well, they went from first time in the history of the company, 50-year history, that they had lost money when this guy came in. In the first year, we turned that around to a pretty significant profit. And it's all basics. It's all basic common sense. There's nothing I'm doing that's special.
Yeah.
And the guy running it is a very intelligent guy. His uncle would walk in the room, and it was like somebody who beat a dog. And every time that guy showed up, the dog cowered. The guy changed his personality entirely. So the first thing I had to do was get rid of a third owner of a company, which is an interesting thing to do.
Yeah.
A family member. But it worked out. The company's doing extremely well, and it's very well managed. And the guy is, he went from, when I first interviewed with him to talk about what I could do for him or what he needed, he was not at all happy. I mean, I think that if you go to work and you hate going to work, you got to find something else to do. And
Right.
That's really where he was. And it had a lot to do with a dingy old office and, again, his uncle. We cleaned all that up, and I won't say he loves going to work, but he certainly is going with a much more positive attitude than he was back then. And it's critical. I mean, you have one life. Every day you have could be your last, and you better make sure you use that day to 100%. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, get the heck out of it.
Right.
Find something else. I went to graduate school with a guy, again, we're in graduate school. He was an engineer, and we were doing our master's in management. And he really wanted to be hammering nails on Long Island somewhere. I mean, I said, what are you doing? Just because you spent so much money on your college education doesn't mean you should be doing it.
Yeah. I'm convinced that a couple things about what you just said. I think most people that are stuck in jobs that they don't enjoy are there because of fear.
Yes.
Because they either don't believe in themselves and are afraid that they will fail.
Yes.
Or they do believe in themselves but are afraid that they will fail. And I don't judge such people because I think that there is baggage there that goes back many years, I'm sure, that has created that fear. But there is a real difference between the people who put that fear aside, or don't put it aside, but welcome it, invite it into their
Right.
lives,
Right.
and say, I'm going to, my favorite analogy, one of our prior guests, Paul Marnichek, said this, it's people who throw their hat over the wall and then figure out how to get it back.
Right.
You know, they're climbing that wall, or they're going around
right.
it, or they're breaking through it, but they're going to get
They're
their
going to
hat
find a
back.
way to get there.
Exactly.
That's exactly what we were talking about. Yeah.
But there is a fearlessness that is required to throw your hat over the wall in the first
Right.
place. And I think anybody could be a business owner. Anybody could be a good entrepreneur.
There's a bunch of good ones, good people out there who just are afraid.
You have to get past that fear just to be able to play in the game.
My father, I grew up with my father always wanting to do something, but he was,
Right.
we have 4 boys, and he felt the need to make sure the family was secure, but he would have been a great business person. He just couldn't do it, and ended up dying at 50 of cancer. So,
Yeah.
He should have taken it. That's why I guess my problem is I have no fear, and I think it's a problem. I have 2 brothers that are private pilots, and I would love to do that, but common sense says if you have no fear and you fly, you will crash.
Right.
Because you're going to get up there and say, I should have checked the gas before I left, huh? Or I don't know. Yeah,
Well, you obviously make good bets. You're obviously very calculating.
True.
You're, but at the same time, I think it's good that you recognize your limitations there. Like I want to keep skydiving.
Yeah.
And I want to learn paragliding and hang gliding. But I too have that problem where I think that at least my fearlessness in those areas could hurt me.
Yeah. Wow. But it allowed me to do things to try things
Right.
And I can say, I've had failures. You learn from the failures.
Yeah.
They're not failures. They're lessons. Some have been pretty severe, but they're lessons. And I would not change any of it. I mean,
Right.
DeLorean's mistake was he had complete success in a large organization where he had a lot of support. He never had a failure. He then is on his own. He doesn't have his support anymore. And I mean, that was really part of his undoing that. And he didn't understand cash flow.
Right.
So, you can have fearlessness, but you better use common sense. You better plan your way through that.
Yeah. Yeah. Terry, this is the part of the show that we call the lightning round.
Okay.
You ready for these?
Sure.
All right. So if Molly Gebler were sitting right here, her lightning round questions are, what are you binging right now?
Nothing. I don't binge watch anything. I can't spend that much time in front of a television set. And so I really binge nothing.
Her next lightning round question is, what's on your mind?
What am I doing here? Help. Let me out.
Why am I answering lightning round questions?
Really, what's on my mind typically is how can I help somebody in business? I mean, I really enjoy doing business consulting. I've always been involved in new products. I've got over 30 patents worldwide, or had granted over 30 patents worldwide. Enjoy watching things come from invention to market. But I also like helping little business guys out who are almost there, but kind of missed, that one step they needed, or simply needed reinforcement. The large consulting job I had, like I said, the guy was really smart. He knew what to do, but he needed somebody to say, this is really what you need to do for the next step. He needed that extra little push. And we put together an advisory board. And again, I would stress that to anybody in business. It's a good idea to get a couple of people together 2 or 3 times a year, tell them what you're doing, and let them pick it apart. Find out what you should be doing. What did you do wrong? What can you do better?
And I've said this before on this podcast and elsewhere. getting a coach is the smartest thing you can do.
Yes.
The best professional athletes and the best business people in the world have coaches. So we are all stupid if we don't think that we need one.
I agree. My problem is I don't have one, and every time I think about getting one, I think, what's he going to tell me? And it's probably an arrogance on my part that.
Well, I was saying you are a good coach, and people should talk to you about it.
I try to be. Absolutely. Yeah. And here's the thing: I've had people tell me they've talked to other consultants or coaches, and those coaches talk down to them.
Yeah.
I'm the coach, you're a dummy, and this is what you need to do. And I think I value everybody for where they are, what they've done, and try to be more of a positive, let's try this, or, if you did that, maybe this would work better, rather than, what a dummy. Why did you do that?
Yeah. No, and if nothing else, I mean, you really need to, as a business owner, get out of your own head. And there are things that you're just not going to want to talk to your employees about. That's when you need a coach. You can't. Right.
There's things that I can't talk to my employees about.
Right.
I shouldn't talk to them about. And frankly, even if I did, what I have found after selling a business is my good friends that were there to help me were no longer my friends. They yes-manned me as much as they could. So I have a stupid idea, and they're going to tell me it's great because they work for me. Hard to tell your boss he's a dumbass, and why did you do that?
That's what, right. And that's why you need a coach, right?
Yeah. You need somebody outside.
Exactly. All right. So my lightning round questions, Terry, which I can remember much more easily than Molly's, are you're on a desert island.
Okay.
For a minimum of 3 months.
Yes.
Could be the rest of your life. Could be 3 months and a day. You don't know. You can bring with you any single musician's entire discography. Who's the musician?
Wow. Probably the Rolling Stones.
All right. That's fair. There's a lot of albums there to keep you busy.
Yeah.
Same desert island. Same amount of time, which is unknown. You can bring with you any author's entire bibliography. Who's the author?
William Gaines.
Ooh, who's that? I don't know.
Mad Magazine.
Excellent.
My favorite.
Well, you know what? That'll keep your spirits up.
It does. If I read one of their satires of a movie, I understand the movie better than if I go watch the movie.
Yeah. Is that still published?
Yes.
Do they still have the fold-ups at the end?
Every other month, and the back page is still a folding.
Yeah.
And I still subscribe.
Gosh, I remember reading that as a kid and thinking that I wasn't supposed to be reading it. Like it's cartoons, but some of them are really raunchy, and they're all hilarious.
There's satire, and I think that's what I like about it is it takes a real life situation and turns it into something. Yeah. And often their point of view of some situation or of a TV show or a movie is really to the point. It's really what's going on. What you're watching and what you're supposed to be thinking about it is different than what's really going on.
It's a brilliant answer, because if you brought 50 years they've
60.
been around, 60 years of Mad magazines, you'd never run out, and you'd laugh a lot.
Yeah.
Brilliant. What is a habit or routine that you do on a regular basis that you've gotten the most mileage out of?
Wow. Another one. Looking at my books every day. I mean, really, just going over where I am every day and seeing where I am in most of my businesses.
Good. That's something I think certainly me, but I'm sure most business owners ought to do a lot more of.
Most don't even do it. I got things to do. I got people to manage. I got sales to make.
Right.
And that's kind of at the bottom of the list for most people. As long as I don't have somebody calling with a collection call, then I must be doing okay.
Yeah. You know what I would encourage people to do Terry, along those lines is, if you don't have good software or a bookkeeper or a controller who is going to create reports for you, get one.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're going to spend a lot of time creating the reports that you need. And I've recently stumbled upon this myself. So I've got a controller here, and she gets me 20 reports every month, and they're staggered throughout the month.
Right.
Last month, it occurred to me, I think what I really want is a dashboard that tells me in one document, in one Excel spreadsheet, with all the support in the support in the attachments.
Right, yeah.
But get me a dashboard that gives me the answers to these questions. And what's our run rate? What's our current run rate? What's our annualized revenue and income?
Yes.
Things like that. How many new clients did we get last month? But it's in one place.
Yeah.
And if you Google small business dashboards or business dashboards, Excel actually has a bunch that are pre-templated for
They're
you.
not bad. They're not bad. You have to customize them, but
yeah.
they're not bad.
But my point is, getting good reports doesn't have to be murder. There are people that can do it for you. There's software that can do it for you, but you got to do it. And if you don't do it, if you don't get them, then you're walking in the dark.
Well, I mean, along the accounting line is I look at accounts receivable every day.
Yeah.
And when you hit 30 days, you're going to get a phone call.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't, again, good guy. I don't have to be a good guy to say, I sent you something. It worked. You need to pay me for it.
Right.
And I don't care how much I like the customer. That doesn't have anything to do with the fact that there's cash out there. I want my cash.
Yeah. And at some point, if they're constantly late, you get them on a prepay.
Yeah. I work out plans for them ahead of time. Now, It's fun. When I came to Cleveland the first time, it was to be vice president of new product development for Lamson & Sessions. Lamson was a 125-year-old fastener manufacturer. And I think our sales were $300 million or something like that. And so the IT department was spending a little over $1 million a year for back then. And I remember one of the first reports I saw, because my job is new product development, I want to see what products are selling. And so we get this 1-inch thick report of all these items. And the first 5 or 6 were no description available. So I went to the president of the company and said, we got to invent more of these. Look at how well they're selling. I mean, the point being, you're spending $1 million and you're getting trash.
Right.
The reports you need as an owner are those that mean something.
Right.
They tell me what I got to do. I don't care. I don't need to know how much of inventory I have of something that's of paper towels.
Right.
But I do need to know what inventory I have of components that are going to go on a part that's going to ship next week to make sure I got enough for that. So, again, it's don't just give me a bunch of paperwork. Give me what I need to manage my company.
Right.
And QuickBooks, I use QuickBooks. I like it. I mean, it's
well,
gives you a lot of good reports. I mean, you can set it up to get what you need.
Right. Terry, the final lightning round question is, what is an embarrassing thing about yourself that no one else knows?
I won't let my wife listen to this. Well, I get a speeding ticket every 2 years, and for the last 20 years, I've gotten a speeding ticket every other year. I get a speeding ticket. I never tell her, because then she'd yell at me.
So obviously this is unintentional. This is
unintentional, but it happens, and it's just been that cycle. I got one in Indiana. I got one in New York. I get them mostly in Ohio.
Well, the good news is if it's a moving violation, then you're only getting your 6 points that you're getting are spread out over a 3-year period, and I think they fall off.
Yeah, they fall off
every 3 years. So hopefully you're spreading it out a little bit.
Yeah,
but
fine.
Talk to me. Hopefully you don't get another one, but if you do, talk to me, because I can help you plead it out.
Yeah, luckily they've all been either they've been less than 20 miles an hour over, or they've written it for less than 20 miles an hour over, because I'm nice to them when they.
There you go.
Well, when you start crying and. It's just an odd thing. I don't know. One of those things.
All right. Well, that is an acceptable answer to that question.
Okay, good.
All right, Terry, this has been a good episode. This has been revealing and informative and inspiring. And I think that if folks have listened this long, then they're probably a business owner or thinking about being one, or had nothing better to do for the last hour and a half. But in any case, if they have been hanging on with us for this long, I am certain that they've gotten a lot out of it. I definitely have, as I always do when I talk to you. So thank you.
Well, I hope that we've helped somebody think about what they're doing and looking for guidance, and maybe you'll either make the step to try to get their own business going or make some improvements in what they do have.
Indeed. Folks, here's what you want to do. Go to the Best.Podcast.Ever.com, click subscribe. That way you'll know when these really fantastic episodes drop before everyone else does. Hopefully you're listening to us on iTunes or Stitcher or Spotify or YouTube, and you must be, because I don't know how else you're gonna. But you can listen to us on any of those platforms. So pick your favorite one. And while you're there, rate us, and give us a bunch of stars and likes or whatever the sign of positive reinforcement that those platforms are providing. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We're at BPE_podcast at those places. And you can email us at bestpodcastever1. That's the number 1 @gmail.com. Thank you for listening this long, and we will see you next time.